She offered her body heat to survive, but together, they broke the alien Hunger Games. Carter opened his eyes slowly. His head was spinning. The floor beneath him felt cold and hard, like metal. A strange hum filled the air. Low and steady, he sat up, shivering, and looked around. He wasn't on Earth anymore. Tall black walls surrounded him, stretching high above. Blue lights blinked on the corners, casting eerie shadows. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, written in no language he knew. Other figures were moving too, aliens of different sizes and shapes, some with claws, others with glowing eyes. Everyone looked confused, door ready to kill. A loud voice boomed from above, speaking in many languages at once. "Welcome to the Hunger Games of Zelvar Prime," the voice said. "Survive, adapt, and only one team may leave alive." Carter's heart pounded fast. He barely had time to think. The ground beneath them shook slightly. And then the floor opened in sections. Weapons, tools, and supplies appeared from hidden panels. A countdown began in a strange tone. 10, 9, 8, ... Everyone rushed, grabbing whatever they could. Carter ran forward, grabbing a thin metal rod and a strange silver blanket. Just then, something moved near him, fast, silent, and close. He turned, ready to defend himself, but it was her, an alien girl, thin, small, with silver blue skin and long white hair. She wore a torn cloak and looked weak, but her eyes were sharp. She didn't attack. Instead, she held up her hands, showing she had no weapon. "Human," she whispered in a soft, shaky voice. "I don't want to fight." Carter stared at her, unsure. "Why are you here then?" he asked. She pointed to the sky, where drones hovered, watching them. "I want to survive," she said. "We can help each other." He looked at her hands, trembling in the cold, and then at her bare feet. She was freezing. Just like him, she held up a small red stone, glowing faintly. "Body heat," she said, voice low. "We share warmth. We survive the night." He didn't know if he could trust her. But her lips were blue, and her breathing was shallow. She wasn't lying about the cold. The air was already biting into his skin. "Fine," Carter said, slowly, "but try anything funny, and we're done." She nodded quickly and stepped closer. They sat behind a pile of metal crates, hiding from view. She unwrapped her thin cloak and shared it with him. Carter wrapped the silver blanket around both of them. For a moment, neither spoke. Her body trembled next to his. Her name was Kari, she told him, in a voice like wind over ice. She had been chosen for this deadly game, like him, taken from her world, thrown here without warning. "This place kills with cold," she whispered. "Night lasts 12 cycles. Many freeze before morning." Carter nodded. It was already colder than anything he had felt on Earth. "I'm not a fighter," she said, her voice cracking, "but I can guide. I know where warmth and food is hidden." "How?" Carter asked, curious. She pointed to her eyes, which glowed slightly. "I see heat," she said. "Like fire in the dark, that might be useful." Carter thought, but deep down he still wasn't sure if he should believe her. Then a loud growl echoed through the walls. Something huge was nearby. Carrie's eyes went wide, and she pressed closer to Carter. "It smells movement," she whispered. "We must stay still." They held their breath as heavy footsteps came closer. A shadow passed by, massive, with sharp claws and 4 legs. It sniffed the air, then moved on, vanishing into the darkness. Carter let out a shaky breath. Kari was still holding onto his arm. "Thank you," she whispered, eyes meeting his. He looked at her, confused. "For not leaving me," she added, voice soft. The cold grew deeper, but they pressed closer, sharing every bit of heat they could. For now, they were safe. But the real games were only beginning, and somewhere out there, others were hunting already. Kari's Breath warmed his shoulder. Carter stared into the dark, gripping his metal rod tighter. Tomorrow, they'd need more than just warmth to survive. They'd need trust, or they'd both die in the cold. The light above them blinked red, then vanished. The temperature dropped even lower, and Kari's lips trembled again. Carter stayed awake through most of the night, watching the shadows move. Beyond the crates, something out there kept circling, sniffing, waiting when morning finally came. It didn't come with a sunrise, just a dim blue glow from above. A mechanical voice spoke from the sky. For eliminated, 20 remain. Carter looked at Kari, still asleep against his side, and whispered, "We're still alive." She stirred, her eyes slowly opening. Then she sat up fast. "Alert, move," she said, grabbing the edge of the blanket. The hunters search early. Carter stood and checked his weapon. It was still just a metal rod bent from yesterday's fight. Kari led the way now, her feet almost silent on the metal floor. She moved like she'd done this before, taking turns with purpose, avoiding open areas. Carter stayed close, not asking questions yet. They passed strange devices along the walls, crystals and cages. Glowing green or red. Don't touch the green ones, Kari said, her voice low. They explode. Carter stopped in his tracks, his hand just inches away from one. "Thanks," he muttered, following her more carefully now. They reached a narrow tunnel filled with pipes and steam. Kari ducked and crawled through, and Carter followed, though the heat made his skin sting. At the end of the tunnel, they entered a small room with flickering lights and a warm stone platform. Kari dropped to her knees beside it, placing both hands on the stone. "It's still working," she said, relief in her voice. This place was once part of the old station. It has heat storage. Carter sat beside her, warming his fingers, finally feeling some blood return to them. "You said you weren't a fighter," he said, looking at her carefully. "But you move like you've done this before." Kari didn't meet his eyes. Instead, staring at the walls, "I trained to be a scout," she said quietly. "Not to kill, just to survive." "And how many games have you been in?" he asked. "This is my first," she replied, then added, "But I've watched many from behind the barrier." "I was meant to serve, not compete." Carter frowned, trying to understand. "Why are you here?" Then he asked. Kari hesitated, then whispered, "Because I escaped," before he could ask more. A sound echoed through the tunnel behind them, low hiss. Kari jumped to her feet and pulled Carter behind the platform. A small sphere rolled into the room. "Blinking red EMP trap," she said, eyes wide. "Close your eyes." The flash was bright, even behind their closed lids, and a loud popping sound followed. The lights died instantly, leaving them in silence. Then footsteps entered, slow and heavy. Carter peeked and saw a large alien figure, armored and carrying a glowing blade. Kari placed a hand on Carter's arm and whispered, "Do not move. He hunts sound, not heat." They stayed completely still as the hunter scanned the room. Blade humming. Carter's heart pounded so loudly he was sure it could be heard. The hunter passed them, then paused, sniffing the air. Kari pressed her lips to Carter's shoulder, whispering something in her own language. Suddenly, a sharp metallic shriek came from outside the room. Another trap. Maybe. The hunter turned and rushed away, chasing the noise. Kari waited 5 more heartbeats, then exhaled slowly. "We can't stay here anymore," she said. "He'll come back." Carter stood and followed her again, this time more urgently. They ran through another passage, colder than before, with frost creeping up the walls. As they moved, Carter finally asked, "Why did you save me back when we first met?" Kari slowed, then looked back at him. "Because I was alone," she said softly. "And you didn't look like someone who gives up." He didn't answer, but her words stayed with him. Soon they reached a broken door, half open. Behind it was a dark Chamber lit by pulsing red lights. Kari looked nervous, biting her lip. "This is the edge of Zone 3, she said. "There are supplies here but others too." Carter gripped his rod, nodding. They stepped inside carefully, their feet echoing on. The metal floor boxers lined the walls, some marked with alien letters. Others with old human symbols. Kari opened one and smiled slightly, pulling out heat packs and a small energy bar. Carter opened another and froze. Inside was a body, frozen, pale, and human. Not old, not decayed, just dead and cold. Kari stepped beside him, her smile fading. "He didn't find a partner," she said quietly. "He froze alone." Carter's jaw tightened, and he looked at her. "Then we make sure we don't end up like him," he said. Kari nodded, and for the first time, held his hand not for warmth, but for something more. Trust was growing, but danger was still one step behind, and in this game, one mistake meant death. They turned and walked deeper into Zone 3, where the next test waited in silence. The scream didn't sound human. It came from the shadows above, sharp and full of hunger. Carter didn't hesitate. He grabbed Kari's arm and pulled her behind a rusted crate. Something landed on the floor near them with a sickening thud. They heard claws scratching the metal, sniffing, moving. Kari clutched her heat stone tightly, whispering a word that made it glow faintly in her palm. Carter's hand tightened around his bent rod, even though he knew it wouldn't help much against whatever was stalking them. The creature moved in slow circles, sniffing loudly. Then it let out another screech and slammed into the wall behind them. It knew they were there. Kari looked at Carter, her eyes glowing in the dim light. "Run when I say," she whispered. "I'll throw the stone and make light. It hates light." Before he could argue, she jumped from cover and rolled the glowing stone into the open. A blinding flash burst. Across the room, the beast shrieked again, angry and afraid. Carter ran, grabbing Kari's hand as she stumbled back. They bolted down a narrow hall, twisted pipes above them, leaking steam and mist. Behind them, the creature slammed into crates. Howling in rage, they didn't look back. They ran until their legs burned. Finally, they reached a sealed hatch, half buried under debris. Carter kicked it open, and they fell through. Landing hard in the cold dust, the place smelled of rust and something sweet and rotten. Kari sat up, holding her side. Wincing in pain, Carter helped her stand, his chest still rising and falling quickly. "That thing was hunting," he said. "It didn't care who we were." Kari nodded slowly, her voice thin. "That was a Phase 3 stalker. It only lives in the cold zones. It hunts at night, but now the cold lasts longer, so it stays out." Carter looked around the new chamber, noticing broken machines and old banners on the walls. "This place looks like control room," he said, brushing dust off a cracked screen. Kari limped toward a nearby wall and pressed a panel, and to their surprise, it lit up with a low hum. "Still has power," she whispered, surprised. "Old tech, but human-made." That made Carter stop. "Human," he repeated. She nodded, pointing to an old patch on the wall, showing a faded Earth flag. "This arena used to be part of an Earth research ship," she said, "before the Zelvar turned it into a blood game." Carter stared at the symbol, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. So this wasn't just an alien place, was stolen, reshaped into a nightmare. Kari found a small control stick and pressed it upward. A hidden drawer opened with a soft hiss, revealing a container of dried food and 2 heat cells. They stared at it like it was treasure. Carter opened one and handed it to her first. "You found it," he said. "You eat first." She took it, but paused, then broke it in half and gave him the rest. He smiled a little and nodded. As they sat against the wall eating quietly, Kari spoke again. "I wasn't supposed to survive," she said, her voice soft. "They called me broken, left me behind. But now I want to win. Not just to live, but to prove I'm not nothing. Carter looked at her, his face serious. You're not nothing, he said. You're the reason I'm still alive. She looked away, but he saw her cheeks glow a soft pink. Before the silence could grow deeper, the wall screen flickered. A camera feed appeared, showing another team in a distant part of the arena. They were strong three-armed aliens, moving together with brutal speed, and one of them had a shock spear glowing with blue current. Kari stared at them, her eyes narrowing. They're moving toward this sector, she said. We need to leave before night returns. Carter stood and helped her up again. We'll find another hiding place, he said. Or maybe something better, like a weapon. Kari looked at him for a long second, then gave a small nod. There is one place, she said. A storage vault under Zone 4. It has weapons, but also traps. Most don't return. Carter grinned, even though his heart pounded harder. Well then, he said. Let's be the first ones who do. They climbed out of the control room, one step at a time. The shadows followed. And the arena shifted again. Somewhere in the dark, another trap was already waiting. And something was watching them through the eyes of machines. But Carter and Kari didn't slow down. They had something most others didn't. Trust, and in the games of Zelvar Prime, trust was a rare and dangerous thing. The symbols on Kari's back started to glow before she even spoke. Carter saw them pulsing through. The tears in her cloak lines of soft blue light that looked almost like veins. He didn't speak at first, afraid any word would break this strange silence between them. They were hiding inside a narrow tunnel beneath Zone 4, surrounded by darkness and humming machines. But Kari was glowing, and not just from the marks. She knelt beside a wall and placed her hand against the metal, and it opened, just like that. Carter stepped back, shocked. How did you do that? He asked quietly. Kari didn't answer right away. She pulled her hand away, and the wall closed again. Silent and smooth. I'm not just from the outer colonies, she said slowly. I was made in a lab, not born in a home. Carter stared at her, unsure what to say. Kari looked down at her hands. The markings? They let me connect with old tech. Not all, but some. You said you were broken. Carter said, walking closer. But this isn't broken. This is power. Kari gave a short laugh, but it sounded bitter. I was supposed to obey, she said. My kind. We're created as tools for war, for repair, for orders. Not for survival. She turned to him, her eyes serious. When I started thinking for myself, they called it corruption. They threw me into this game to erase the problem quietly. Carter felt his stomach twist. All this time, he'd thought she was just another player, weak, but clever. Now he saw something more, someone caught between what she was built for and what she chose to be. Then let's show them you're not their tool anymore, he said, offering his hand. Kari took it, slowly, her fingers shaking just a little. The wall opened again at her touch, revealing a long dark hallway with old security lights blinking on one by one. They walked side by side, deeper into the hidden vault. It smelled of dust and burned circuits, and somewhere, water was dripping slowly. Shelves lined the walls, filled with broken weapons, old armor, and crates sealed with alien symbols. Kari moved quickly, her glowing eyes scanning everything. Carter grabbed what he could, working blade with a short handle, a heat grenade with one charge, and a small scanner unit. Kari found a compact chest plate and slipped it under her cloak, the blue lines of her skin vanishing beneath it. They didn't talk much, just worked, fast and focused. But the peace didn't last. A thud echoed from behind them. Then another, heavier. Carter turned and saw a massive shadow move past the hallway entrance. Kari froze, her hand over her mouth. It's him, she whispered. The champion of last season. He's back in the game. Carter remembered seeing his face in the opening broadcast. A scarred alien with metal limbs and a long spear that sparked with every step. Kari and Carter backed deeper into the vault, searching for another exit. There was only one past the hall the hunter now patrolled. Split up, Kari whispered, her voice shaking. He'll follow movement. I can distract him. You go for the door. No, Carter said firmly. We do this together, like always. Kari's breath caught. No one had ever chosen her over safety. They moved together, low and fast. Keeping to the shadows, the hunter entered, his spear dragging sparks behind him. Kari whispered something, and the lights above flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed the room, but her eyes still glowed faintly. She raised her hand toward an old energy coil, and it blinked to life. Humming, the hunter turned toward it. Distracted, Carter used that moment, running toward the exit with Kari at his side, but the hunter heard their steps and roared, charging. Forward, he threw his spear, and it missed Carter by inches. Striking the wall and exploding with lightning, Kari stumbled, falling hard. And Carter turned back instantly. The hunter was already lifting a new blade. Carter didn't think he threw the heat grenade straight at the coil. The blast was loud and bright, blinding white in the dark. The hunter screamed, metal skin melting, circuits burning. Carter pulled Kari to her feet, and they limped through the exit just before the vault sealed shut again. They fell into silence once more, breathing hard, covered in ash and fear. Kari looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. You could have left me, but I didn't, Carter said, helping her walk. For a moment, nothing needed to be said. The world had tried to break her, reshape her, throw her away. But now she wasn't alone. And that made her dangerous. As they disappeared into the next zone, both wounded but alive, something shifted in the arena. Far above, the watchers noted the change. For the first time, two broken pieces had started to become whole together. The ground opened beneath his foot, and Carter vanished. 1 second he was there beside Kari. The next, he was gun-swallowed by a silent trapdoor hidden in the dirt. Kari screamed his name and dropped to her knees, reaching into the darkness. There was no answer, just cold air rushing up from the hole. The floor sealed itself seconds later with a hiss, like it had never opened at all. She hit the surface with her fists, panic rising in her throat. She pressed her ear to the ground, but she heard nothing. Then, without thinking, she placed her glowing hand against the metal. A line of blue light traced a path from the floor to the wall, revealing a hidden route downward. Carter opened his eyes to pitch black, his body aching. He'd landed hard on something sharp, and his arm was bleeding. He tried to move, but felt something press against his ankle, thin and tight like a coil. He reached down and froze. Wires. He was tangled in a snare of old machine cables. A soft clicking sound echoed nearby, like metal teeth tapping together. Something was down there with him. He reached for his rod, but it had snapped on the fall. His only weapon was a fist-sized rock, and the hope Kari was coming. The clicking got closer, slow and steady. He held his breath as glowing red eyes appeared in the dark, small at first, then more opened behind them. 3, 5, 7. They moved. Low. Crawling on the walls, machines made of bone and wire. They scanned him silently. Then one crept forward, reaching for his foot. Carter kicked hard, smashing its head with the rock, sparks flying. It screamed like metal tearing, and the others leaped forward. Suddenly, the wall exploded behind them. A blast of heat lit the chamber. And Kari stepped through the smoke, her eyes glowing bright like fire. She threw a spark rod into the mass, and the machines burst into flame, twitching and shrieking. Kari ran to Carter and cut the cables from his legs with a sharp blade. He fell into her arms, coughing and stunned. "You followed me?" he gasped. "Of course I did," she said, wrapping his arm over her shoulder. You're not leaving me that easy. They limped together through the tunnel, flames behind them and smoke rising through the vents above them. Watchers from many worlds gasped and murmured in their alien languages. A human and a failed creation had just beaten the odds again. They reached a small chamber where Kari dropped him gently on a pile of old cloth. She tore a strip from her cloak and wrapped it around his bleeding arm. He watched her silently, his breath slowing. "You knew the path," he said. "You knew where I fell." Kari hesitated, then nodded. "This zone was part of the old prototype arena," she said. "I studied it when I was young. Before I was thrown away." Carter looked at her, pain in his voice. "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" "Because I didn't want you to think I was a machine," she whispered. "I wanted you to see me as more than parts and programs." "I do," Carter said firmly. "I see you." The silence that followed was warm, different from before. Then a noise from above broke it. Footsteps, heavy and many. A group was nearby, moving toward them. Kari grabbed the scanner and checked its screen. 3 signals fast, armed, closing in. "It's the trio from earlier," she said. They saw the fire. Carter stood with effort, taking the blade Kari had used. "We can't outrun them, can we?" "No," she said, "but we can hide." She led him to a thin metal wall and pressed her hand against it. It opened, revealing a tight shaft filled with cables. They crawled inside and sealed it behind them, holding their breath as the other team entered. The chamber moments later, voices echoed through the metal, deep and sharp, arguing over the source of the explosion. One of them laughed a cruel, metallic sound. Then footsteps stomped closer to the wall, where Carter and Kari were hidden. Carter held her hand tightly, ready for the worst, but the enemies turned back. Unable to find the path, minutes passed. Then silence returned. Kari exhaled slowly, leaning her head against the wall. "We can't keep doing this," Carter said quietly. "Running, hiding, bleeding, losing pieces of ourselves every time Kari looked at him." Her voice low and steady. "Then let's stop hiding," she said. "Let's fight back." Carter smiled faintly, even through the pain. "Now that sounds like a plan." Far above, the arena shifted again. Lights changing, boundaries reforming. It knew something had changed. And now, so did everyone watching, because the prey had just made a choice to become predators. The sound of thunder cracked beneath the ground, but no storm followed it. Carter opened his eyes to orange mist filling the air. Kari wasn't beside him anymore. His chest tightened, not from pain, but from sudden emptiness. He stood quickly, his feet unsteady, his arms still bandaged from the last battle they had hidden. Inside a tunnel near the old vents, resting, breathing, preparing. But now she was gone. Her heat stone lay where she had slept, still warm. Then he saw it etched in the metal wall, scratched with a sharp edge. "Trust me," it read, in her careful, jagged writing. Carter stared at the words, a chill moving down his spine. Something was wrong. He picked up the heat stone and pressed forward into the rising fog. Meanwhile, Kari stood in the center of a strange circle, surrounded by tall steel towers buzzing with energy. She wasn't alone. The 3 alien warriors had found her, led by the one with the glowing shock spear. They circled her like wolves, amused, confident. Kari said nothing, her cloak torn, her eyes calm. "You're not a real player," one of them growled. "You're just a test subject, a broken toy." Kari didn't blink. "Then why are you afraid of me?" she asked quietly. They didn't answer, but their movements changed, tense, cautious. They didn't expect her to speak like that, not with that much fire. Carter watched the scene from above. It's crawling through a broken air vent. He wanted to jump down, to fight, but Kari's words echoed in his mind. "Trust me." So he waited, heart pounding, hidden in the shadows. Kari raised both her hands slowly. and the marks on her arms lit up like stars. The towers around her responded, pulsing brighter. The air vibrating with energy. What is she doing? One of the aliens hissed, "She's sinking." Another snapped, "Stop her." But it was too late. Kari slammed her palms together, and the towers exploded with light. A wave of force knocked all three warriors back. Throwing them against the walls, the spear wielder roared and charged through the brightness, his weapon crackling. Kari moved to dodge, but not fast enough. The spear scraped across her ribs, slicing through cloth and skin. She fell hard. Her breath knocked from her lungs. Carter couldn't wait any longer. He burst through the vent above. Dropping onto the spear wielder's back with a scream, they both hit the ground. The spear clattering across the floor, Carter grabbed it, turned, and drove it into the alien's shoulder. Electricity bursting in all directions, the warrior shrieked and collapsed, twitching. The other two rose quickly. Dazed but alive, Kari, still on the ground, raised her hand again, the lines on her neck glowing deep blue. Carter grabbed her wrist, helping her up. "Together now," he said, breathing hard. Kari nodded, her face pale but fierce. They moved as one, dodging the first attacker. Tricking the second and striking fast, Kari kicked one into a tower's pulse beam. Stunning him instantly, Carter used the spear's last charge on the final warrior. Watching him fall in a flash of sparks, then everything was silent again. They stood alone. Surrounded by smoking towers and broken enemies, Kari fell to her knees, blood dripping from her side. Carter dropped beside her, holding her close. "You said not to follow," he whispered. "I lied," she breathed, smiling weakly. "I didn't want you hurt. You think I care about that anymore?" he said, wiping blood from her cheek with shaking fingers. She laughed softly, the sound rough but real. "You're strange for a human," she whispered, "but I'm glad you're mine." Above them, the arena changed again, the walls sliding open. To reveal the final zone, only 4 players remained now, and 2 of them stood together. Arm in arm, somewhere far above, the hosts of the game watched in silence, unsure whether to be impressed or alarmed, because the human wasn't supposed to survive, and the broken alien wasn't supposed to rebel. But now they were a team that couldn't be broken, and they were heading into the final trial with nothing left to lose except each other. The sky was falling, but not with rain. Ash and fire drifted from above as the arena restructured itself for the final round. Metal plates groaned as towers sank into the ground and glowing pathways lit up under Kari's feet. She stood, shakily, beside Carter, clutching her side where blood still leaked through the cloth. Carter's arm was around her waist, holding her steady. They didn't speak because words weren't needed now. The path ahead led into the core. It was a black, humming chamber surrounded by rotating rings of light and shadow. Only 2 were left now, Carter and Kari, and the arena knew it. A deep voice filled the air again, one that had haunted them since the first moment final phase initiated. It said, "Only one leaves." Kari looked at Carter, her face unreadable. "They want us to choose," she whispered, "to turn on each other now." Carter didn't answer, just stared ahead. As they stepped into the final zone, the room sealed behind them with a heavy thud. In the center stood a single platform, glowing with white heat. Above it hovered a pod, the escape shuttle. Only one seat. Carter stepped forward, jaw tight. Kari followed, slower, weaker, but still holding herself tall. "I won't fight you," she said softly. "And I won't leave you," Carter replied. The voice above laughed, cold and slow. "One must die," it said, "or both will be erased." Kari's eyes glowed faintly, her voice shaking. "There's no trick. No other door, no puzzle," she said. "Just death or betrayal." Carter stared at the platform, then looked back at her. Then we do neither, he said. Let's break the rules. Kari blinked, surprised. Carter moved toward the central control unit and placed his hand on it. Can you link in too? This? He asked. Kari nodded slowly, stepped beside him, and placed her palm against the console. Her markings flared brighter than ever before. The lights in the chamber flickered and the walls shook. You're interfering, the voice warned. Louder now. Kari gritted her teeth, her body trembling under the pressure. They used me to control systems, she said. But I can control more than they expected, she screamed as power surged through her. And the console cracked beneath her hand. Carter grabbed her other arm, steadying her, shouting over the sound. Reprogram it. Shut down the lockout. Override the death command. Kari's voice rang out like thunder. Speaking code and numbers in a language older than any of them, the platform sparked. The escape pod flickered. And then the rules shattered. 2 seats emerged. Side by side, the arena stopped shaking. The voice now silent. Kari collapsed to her knees, her skin dimming, her strength gone. Carter caught her before she hit the floor. You did it, he said, holding her tight. You broke their game. I just followed your lead. She whispered, her head on his shoulder, together. They climbed into the pod, hand in hand, the door sealed. Lights inside warming them for the first time, not from fear, but from comfort. The pod rose through the burning ceiling, leaving the arena behind. Below, the audience of 100 alien worlds watched in silence. 2 were meant to enter, and only 1 to leave. But they had chosen something else. Trust, unity, defiance. As stars unfolded around them, Kari leaned her head against Carter's arm. Where will we go now? She asked, her voice soft. Anywhere, Carter replied, smiling for the first time in days. Someplace they can't control us. She closed her eyes, finally resting, and for the first time since the games began. No one was watching them anymore, only the stars, only freedom.